America will not retreat until the terror fight is over. We will labor tirelessly alongside you to defeat ISIS, Al-Qaeda, and other jihadists that threaten our security and yours. President Trump has made the decision to bring our troops home from Syria. We always do, and now is the time. But this isn't a change of mission.
Secretary of State Mike Pompeo saying he wants our troops to come home as the military says it has started pulling equipment, but not troops, out of Syria. Mr. Pompeo is in the Middle East working to reassure our allies about the president's plan as the administration is ramping up pressure on Iran.
We are very hopeful that we will get the bad actors in the region, the Russians and the Iranians, to come to the table, along with the regime and all the other stakeholders in there, to come to the table and have conversations about what a post-Civil War political structure might look like in Syria.
Dan Hoffman is here. He's a former CIA station chief who served in the Middle East and a Fox News contributor. Dan, thank you for being here. And, considering the positive impact, geopolitical jeopardy, and troop security, what are the consequences of American troops' withdrawal from Syria?
Well, it's a little bit early to be talking about withdrawing our troops. At this point, as you mentioned, it's just some equipment. I do think that there's a potential contradiction here. Secretary Pompeo, in his speech in Cairo, emphasized that when the U.S. retreats, chaos follows, and he was highlighting, and rightly so, lessons learned from the Obama administration when we withdrew our troops from Iraq, and ISIS followed in that vacuum and took over such geographic space in Iraq and in Syria. The question now before us is whether those 2,000 U.S. troops are indispensable to finishing the fight against ISIS. And, Ambassador Bolton has highlighted that they should remain until ISIS is defeated and until Turkey guarantees that they won't attack the Kurds.
Because they have not guaranteed that. Turkey has not guaranteed that. So, and I understand your point. I mean, during the trip to the Middle East, you want to ask, what is the message and agenda for Secretary of State Pompeo, National Security Advisor Bolton, who was there earlier in the week? What is the agenda and who is their target audience? I mean, and furthermore, Dan, do these chief ambassadors of U.S. foreign policy take with them a cohesive method and plan in concert with President Trump?
Right. Well, the potential contradictory element of this is the United States wants our regional partners to take responsibility for their own security. And that was something that Secretary Pompeo emphasized. He also highlighted that the United States is a true friend and a loyal ally to our partners in the Middle East, unlike China, unlike Russia. And he emphasized that our two key enemies are Iran and ISIS, and they remain so. And so there's a little bit of tension between how much skin in the game the United States will have, how many forward deployed troops we will have, with all that goes along with that, including intelligence collection, training assist to the Kurds, and maybe most importantly, deterring the Turks where planning is ongoing for attacks against the Kurds. And that's essentially would amount to tactical fratricide, where if the Kurds are defending themselves from the Turks, then they make up the bulk of the Syrian defense forces that have taken the fight to ISIS. I think we'd have some problems with ISIS reconstituting itself.
And you are the former CIA station chief again in Moscow, Iraq, and Pakistan. I mean, you laid out the complexities of this operation here, however it's going to proceed. How are the steps by the United States there in Syria being perceived and monitored by Russia, Turkey, and Iran? And those three actors could get together, and they are having conversations without the United States.
Right, and they have been. I mean, the Middle East is a big part of Vladimir Putin's strategy for Russia to become resurgent again. And I think he saw Syria way back in the Obama administration when we didn't enforce the red line as an opportunity, as a force multiplier for Russia to gain leverage and influence. And we've already seen the Kurds approaching the Russians, so that maybe they could strike a deal with Russia's assistance with Syria to defend themselves from Turkey. So, I mean, the Middle East is all about Machiavellian realpolitik in a Hobbesian universe. It is a dangerous place. And without the United States, the question is whether, without without our influence, whether it reverts to that state, which is so dangerous and creates so much of a humanitarian catastrophe that these extremists, radical Islamic extremists, prey upon. So I think the Russians see an opportunity with the removal of our troops. I know that they've lauded the decision by the United States and their own media to do so. I think Turkey is nervous because I think they know they need our military enablers, especially our artillery. And I think Syria would just like to get us out because they know that we've been standing up with the Syrian opposition against Assad's brutal, repressive regime, which has used chemical weapons.
Right. I mean, so many more questions, Dan. We'll have to get you back because I'm told we're out of time. But I do want to quickly, if I can get a quick answer from you, what are you most concerned about in the wake of, should there be a complete American troop withdrawal from Syria?
I would just quickly invoke the late Charles Krauthammer, who used to say that if there was a strategic necessity for us to be someplace and risk spilling blood and treasure so that we could defend ourselves overseas and eliminate threats so that we wouldn't have to do so here in the United States, that's what this administration has to determine. And ultimately, I think the Trump doctrine for the Middle East will be judged based in large part on how Syria plays out.
Dan Hoffman, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much for your analysis, Dan.
Thank you.